We're continuing our reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3. We're right now on the 13th chapter, entitled The Appearance of Lord Varāha, and we're taking up at verse number 37. Moreover, the Lord... 37. Everyone ready? Moreover, O Lord, the repetition of your appearance is the desire for all kinds of initiation. Your neck is the place for 3 desires, and your tusks are the result of initiation and the end of all desires. Your tongue is the prior activities of initiation. Your head is the fire without sacrifice, as well as the fire of worship, and your living forces are the aggregate of all desires. O Lord, your semen is the sacrifice called Soma Yajna. Your growth is the ritualistic performances of the morning. Your skin and touch sensations are the 7 elements of the Agnishtoma sacrifice. Your bodily joints are symbols of various other sacrifices performed in 12 days. Therefore you are the object of all sacrifices called Soma and Asoma, and you are bound by yajnas only. Purport: there are 7 kinds of routine yajnas performed by all followers of the Vedic rituals, and they are called Agnishtoma, Atyanishtoma, Ukta Shodashi, Vajrapeya, Atiratra, and Aptoryama. Anyone performing such yajnas regularly is supposed to be situated with the Lord. But anyone who is in contact with the Supreme Lord by discharging devotional service is understood to have performed all different varieties of yajnas. 39. O Lord, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead and are worshipable by universal prayers, Vedic hymns, and sacrificial ingredients. We offer obeisances unto you. You can be realized by the pure mind freed from all visible and invisible material contamination. We offer our respectful obeisances to you as the supreme spiritual master of knowledge in devotional service. Purport: the qualification of bhakti, or devotional service to the Lord, is that the devotee should be free from all material contaminations and desires. This freedom is called vairagya, or renouncement of material desires. One who engages in devotional service to the Lord according to regulative principles is automatically freed from material desires, and in that pure state of mind one can realize the personality of Godhead. The personality of Godhead, being situated in everyone's heart, instructs the devotee regarding pure devotional service so that he may ultimately achieve the association of the Lord. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 10:10 as follows: Tesham satata yuktanam vajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. To one who constantly engages in the devotional service of the Lord with faith and love, the Lord certainly gives the intelligence to achieve him at the ultimate end. One has to conquer the mind, and one may do it by following the Vedic rituals and by performing different types of sacrifice. The ultimate end of all those performances is to attain bhakti, or the devotional service of the Lord. Without bhakti, one cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The original Personality of Godhead, or his innumerable expansions of Vishnu, are the only objects of worship by all the Vedic rituals and sacrificial performances. O lifter of the earth with its mountains, which you have lifted with your tusks, is situated as beautifully as a lotus flower with leaves sustained by an infuriated elephant just coming out of the water. Purport: the fortune of the earth planet is praised because of its being specifically sustained by the Lord. Its beauty is appreciated and compared to that of a lotus flower situated on the trunk of an elephant. As a lotus flower with leaves is very beautifully situated, so the world with its many beautiful mountains, appeared on the tusks of the Lord boar. O Lord, as the peaks of great mountains become beautiful when decorated with clouds, your beautiful body has become beautiful because of your lifting the earth on the edge of your tusks. The word Vibhramaḥ is significant. Vibhramaḥ means illusion as well as beauty. When a cloud rests on the peak of a great mountain, it appears to be sustained by the mountain, and at the same time it looks very beautiful. Similarly, the Lord has no need to sustain the earth on his tusks, but when he does so, the world becomes joyful, just as the Lord becomes more beautiful because of his pure devotees on the earth. Although the Lord is the transcendental personification of the Vedic hymns, he has become more beautiful because of his appearance to sustain the earth. O Lord, for the residential purposes of all inhabitants, both moving and non-moving, this earth is your wife, and you are the Supreme Father. We offer our respectful obeisances unto you, along with Mother Earth, in whom you have invested your own potency, just as an expert sacrificer puts fire in the arani wood. Purport: the so-called law of gravitation which sustains the planets is described herein as the potency of the Lord. This potency is invested by the Lord in the way that an expert sacrificial brahmana puts fire in the arani wood by the potency of Vedic mantras. By this arrangement, the world becomes habitable for both the moving and non-moving creatures. The conditioned souls who are residents of the material world are put in the womb of Mother Earth in the same way the seed of a child is put by the father in the womb of the mother. This conception of the Lord and the earth as father and mother is explained in Bhagavad Gita 14:4. Conditioned souls are devoted to the motherland in which they take their birth, but they do not know their father. The mother is not independent in producing children. Similarly, material nature cannot produce living creatures unless in contact with the Supreme Father, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam teaches us to offer obeisances unto the mother along with the Father, the Supreme Lord, because it is the Father only who impregnates the mother with all energies for the sustenance and maintenance of all living beings, both moving and non-moving. Who else but you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, could deliver the earth from within the water? It is not very wonderful for you, however, because you acted most wonderfully in the creation of the universe. By your energy, you have created this wonderful cosmic manifestation. Purport: when a scientist discovers something impressive to the ignorant mass of people, the common man, without inquiry, accepts such a discovery as wonderful. But the intelligent man is not struck with wonder by such discoveries. He gives all credit to the person who created the wonderful brain of the scientist. A common man is also struck with wonder by the wonderful action of material nature, and he gives all credit to the cosmic manifestation. The learned Krishna-conscious person, however, knows well that behind the cosmic manifestation is the brain of Krishna, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9:10. Mayadakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. Since Krishna can direct the wonderful cosmic manifestation, it is not at all wonderful for him to assume the gigantic form of a boar and thus deliver the earth from the mire of the water. A devotee is therefore not astonished to see the wonderful boar, because he knows that the Lord is able to act far more wonderfully by his potencies, which are inconceivable to the brain of even the most erudite scientist. 44. O Supreme Lord, undoubtedly we are inhabitants of the most pious planets, the Jana, Tapas, and Satyalokas, but still we have been purified by the drops of water sprinkled from your shoulder hairs by the shaking of your body. Ordinarily, the body of a hog is considered impure, but one should not consider that the hog incarnation assumed by the Lord is also impure. That form of the Lord is the personified Vedas and is transcendental. The inhabitants of the Jana, Tapas, and Satya Lokas are the most pious persons in the material world. But because those planets are situated in the material world, there are so many material impurities there also. Therefore, when the drops of water from the tips of the Lord's shoulder hairs were sprinkled upon the bodies of the inhabitants of the higher planets, they felt purified. The Ganges water is pure because of its emanating from the toe of the Lord, and there is no difference between the water emanating from the toe and that from the tips of the hair of the shoulder of Lord Bor. They are both absolute and transcendental. O Lord, there is no limit to your wonderful activities. Anyone who desires to know the limit of your activities is certainly nonsensical. Everyone in this world is conditioned by the powerful mystic potencies. Please bestow your causeless mercy upon these conditioned souls. Mental speculators who want to understand the limit of the unlimited are certainly nonsensical. Every one of them is captivated by the external potencies of the Lord. The best thing for them is to surrender unto Him, knowing Him to be inconceivable. For thus they can receive His causeless mercy. This prayer was offered by the inhabitants of the higher planetary systems, namely the Jana, Tapas, and Satya Lokas, who are far more intelligent and powerful than humans. Vishvam Samastam is very significant here. There are the material world and the spiritual world. The sages pray, both worlds are bewildered by your different energies. Those who are in the spiritual world are absorbed in your loving service, forgetting themselves, and you also. And those in the material world are absorbed in the material sense gratification, and therefore also forget you. No one can know you because you are unlimited. It is best not to try to know you by unnecessary mental speculation. Rather, kindly bless us so that we can worship you with causeless devotional service. Text 46. Maitreya said, the sage, the Lord, being thus worshipped by all the great sages and transcendentalists, touched the earth with his hooves and placed it on the water. Purport. The earth was placed on the water by his inconceivable potency. The Lord is all-powerful, and therefore he can sustain the huge planets either on the water or in the air as he likes. The tiny human brain cannot conceive how these potencies of the Lord can act. Man can give some vague explanation of the laws by which such phenomena are made possible, but actually the tiny human brain is unable to conceive of the activities of the Lord, which are therefore called inconceivable. Yet the frog philosophers still try to give some imaginary explanation. In this matter, the personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, the maintainer of all living entities, raised the earth from within the water, and having placed it afloat on the water, he returned to his own abode. The personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, descends by his will to the material planets in his innumerable incarnations for particular purposes. And again, he goes back to his own abode. When he descends, he is called an avatara, because avatara means one who descends. Neither the Lord himself nor his specific devotees who come to this earth are ordinary living entities like us. 48. If one hears and describes in a devotional service attitude this auspicious narration of Lord Bor, which is worthy of description, the Lord, who is within the heart of everyone, is very pleased. Purport. In his various incarnations, the Lord appears, acts, and leaves behind him a narrative history which is as transcendental as he himself. Every one of us is fond of hearing some wonderful narration, but most stories are neither auspicious nor worth hearing because they are of the inferior quality of material nature. Every living entity is of superior quality, spirit soul, and nothing material can can be auspicious for him. Intelligent persons should therefore hear personally and cause others to hear the descriptive narrations of the Lord's activities, for that will destroy the pangs of material existence. Out of his causeless mercy only the Lord comes to this earth and leaves behind his merciful activities so that the devotees may derive transcendental benefit. Haribol. Haribol. Nothing remains unachieved when the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pleased with someone. By transcendental achievement, one understands everything else to be insignificant. One who engages in transcendental loving service is elevated to the highest perfectional stage by the Lord Himself, who is seated in everyone's heart. Purport, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 10:10, the Lord gives intelligence to the pure devotees so that they may be elevated to the highest perfectional stage. It is confirmed herein that a pure devotee who constantly engages in loving service to the Lord is awarded all knowledge necessary to reach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For such a devotee, there is nothing valuable to be achieved but the Lord's service. If one serves faithfully, there is no possibility of frustration, because the Lord Himself takes charge of the devotee's advancement. The Lord is seated in everyone's heart, and He knows the devotee's motive and arranges everything achievable, and arranges everything achievable, arranges everything achievable. In other words, the pseudo-devotee who is anxious to achieve material gains cannot attain the highest perfectional stage because the Lord is in knowledge of his motive. One merely has to become sincere in his purpose, and then the Lord is there to help in every way. Who other than one who is not a human being can exist in this world and not be interested in the ultimate goal of life? Who can refuse the nectar of narrations about the personality of Godhead's activities, which by itself can deliver one from all material pangs? The narration of the activities of the personality of Godhead is like a constant flow of nectar. No one can refuse to drink such nectar except one who is not a human being. Devotional service to the Lord is the highest goal of life for every human being, and such devotional service begins by hearing about the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead. Only an animal or a man who is almost an animal in behavior can refuse to take an interest in hearing the transcendental message of the Lord. There are many books of stories and histories in the world, but except for the histories or narrations on the topics of the personality of Godhead, none are capable of diminishing the burden of material pangs. Therefore, one who is serious about eliminating material existence must chant and hear of the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead. Otherwise, one must be compared to the non-humans. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 30th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Appearance of Lord Varāha. Bravo! Bravissimo! Sadhu, sadhu! And now we'll take some reflections or questions. Mahendra Prabhu.
Prabhupada stated in Purport of 39 verse, one who engages in devotional service to the Lord according to regulative principles automatically freed from material desires. And in that pure state one can realize the Supreme. So, just naturally a question arises, if one does the service, the desires should diminish and disappear, but we can see in our own life or others who have practiced diligently, seemingly the regulative principles, still desires are there. Is it the quality of the practice the problem, or any other?
Lord Chaitanya gives the metaphor of a gardener, and then he talks about how unwanted desires are like weeds in the garden. And he specifically talks about, as does Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, whom Prabhupada paraphrases in a long purport, that the gardener must be vigilant in two ways. One is not to water the weeds, and the other one is to pluck the weeds as well. So, although Krishna is the Vidunoti, he helps us sort out everything, we also have to use our free will when we see an anartha, at least to, as Krishna reveals it to us, to admit that it's there and to try to take the weed out. Otherwise, one can go on chanting for a long, long time, but without willfully weeding the garden, taking out the weeds, then one may be disappointed. And also, he mentions that first point I made, and that is that if you're watering by chanting, and you're not thinking about how you're pouring on in other words, you may be chanting and you may be meditating, and it doesn't mean just when you're chanting japa, it means in your life in general. You may be allowing yourself to fixate on material desires, and without objectifying them and noticing that they're superfluous to us and to our self-interest, and then asking Krishna to help to remove them, then we're not doing our work as a gardener. Yes, Devavrata Prabhu.
So does plucking the weeds mean admitting they're there and then sincerely praying to Krishna to help while simultaneously taking action in one's own control of the mind and the senses to avoid such tendencies, habits, circumstances? Is that what it practically means to pluck?
Well, first is an awareness that they're there. Because one of the ways that anarthas stay is that we don't even want to admit it to ourselves that it's there. Because we have this knowingness, awareness I should say, that if I admit that I have the anartha, then I'll have to give it up. And so Prabhupada mentions in a purport that one of the ways that we can pluck the weed, or it can be effectively diminished, is by neglect. He uses the word neglect. So once we know that it's there and we don't, as we say in the 10th offense, maintaining material desires. You think of maintenance, like say you have a bunch of flower pots. Each one of them has a little anartha in it. Every morning you come out, do, and you water each one of them, and like, how are you doing? You're okay, right? Nobody knows you're here, except for me. And then they thrive because I keep watering them. But there's a point at which we should recognize them and say, I'm just not going to water you. Just don't water them anymore. Don't give them that kind of attention and maintenance that one has been giving them. And then knowing that one has anarthas, to take measures to get good association, knowing that the light of good association will very naturally help us to overcome those anarthas. As we know, when we're in good association, then the anarthas stand out to us much more. There's silly little things one can become attached to, but when one gets in association of devotees who are living at a higher standard, then those things start to seem trivial and not worth keeping. And also, I heard a story once about these two policemen in New Delhi, and they're walking along their beat at night, and one of them was saying, we're on this beat to prevent thievery. He said, but isn't it funny that our God, he's the biggest thief of all? And the other one said, actually that's a good thing. He said, because people here, we see in this neighborhood, they put up high walls and locks to protect all their things. He said, we also put up high walls and locks around our heart to protect our own anarthas. He said, but Krishna is such an excellent, he's such an adept thief that he can scale a high wall and get in and steal it. So one of the ways of finishing one's anarthas is at least, even if you're afraid to deal with it directly, and leave the gate open. It's like, if one makes a prayer, like Prithu Maharaj does, he says, just like a little boy doesn't know what's good for him, so he leaves it to his father. So you do what you think is right for me. And he says to Krishna, I don't even know what's good for me. So therefore my prayer is that you do as you wish. Seems like a risky thing to do, right? But Krishna knows exactly what to do. And so if that awareness, I leave the door open for Krishna, I could even say, I'm not strong enough to pull out this anartha myself, but Krishna, I'm giving you permission. Please make me give it up. And Giriraj Maharaj told that story about how there was this young man who was helping Prabhupada translate his books into Marathi. And his father would come along sometimes just to meet Prabhupada because the younger person was checking the translation with Prabhupada. And the young man's father had a habit of smoking, which he's having a hard time giving up. So Prabhupada asked him about it a couple times. And the last time he asked him, he said, so how have you been able to give up the smoking habit? And the man said, for that I need your special mercy. And Prabhupada replied, said, yes, you can get special mercy. Special mercy means Krishna will put you in a condition of suffering that's so bad that you'll be forced to give it up. So he said, would you like the special mercy? And then the man said, no, I'll do it myself. So at least there's an awareness that it's there, and then their neglect is asking Krishna, please help me remove this. Ata vishvesha vishvatman vishvamurti sukeshu me sneha pasam imam chindi dridham pandishu vishnishu. Kunti was praying to Krishna, please cut it. You come in and cut it. I'm opening the door for you. And there are numerous prayers in those ways where devotees recognize they have some anartha and they ask Krishna to please remove it.
Srila Prabhupada has this verse in Purport in the 5th canto, that prayer to Lord Nrsingadeva, Om Namo Bhagavate Narasimhaya. Is that an appropriate?
That's a really appropriate one. That's right to the point. That Lord Nrsingadeva, please vanquish my demon-like desires. The demon-like desires of my heart, rip them to shreds, with your nails that are like thunderbolt. Just tear them up.
Gresha.
Here, go get them, I like remember, Lord Nrsingadeva bifurcates your nartas. Yeah, it's a good one. Thanks. We should make a list of who's making all these lists I'm asking for. Did you write them down? Because if it gets written, it'll start having. We want one with all the foreign words Prabhupada uses, starting with all the French.
I have 40 French words.
You have 40 to start with? Okay, and then want a list of all the prayers, anartha busting prayers. A book of anartha busting prayers. Anartha busters. The prayers of Vrijasura. See?
Wow.
Write them all down. We're already halfway there. Okay, let's see. What else? Narada Muni, Bhajai Vina, and then Prabhupada Priya.
I was just text 49. nothing remains unachieved when the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pleased with someone. By transcendental achievement, one understands everything else to be insignificant. One who engages in transcendental loving service is elevated to the highest perfectional stage by the Lord Himself, who is seated in everyone's heart. And then Prabhupada quotes Tesham Satata Yuktanam Bhajatam Pratipurvakam, and he defines it as, the Lord gives intelligence to the pure devotees. And I saw this highlighted from the last time I was reading the third canto, and I said, only the pure devotees? What does that mean? And I was reading, at the end, we understand what Prabhupada's defining as a pure devotee. One merely has to become sincere in his purpose, and then the Lord is there to help in every way. This idea of the green mango and the ripe mango. And I heard one time from a devotee, he told me, sincerity is invincible. I just was appreciating that.
Well done. Prabhupada Priya and then Samya Prash.
Hare Krishna. I was thinking that just in case anyone is getting distracted by thoughts like, here it is, the month of Kartik, and we're in Vraj. Shouldn't we be hearing about Radha and Krishna? We're talking about Varāha Dev here. So I was remembering that Uddhava mentions all the different ways in which Radharani accompanies Krishna in his different incarnations. Like, for example, when he comes as Ram, then Radha expands as Sita. When he comes as Kurmadev, then Radharani becomes Vasuki. When he comes as Parashuram, Radharani becomes his axe. And when he comes as Varāha Dev, then Radharani becomes the earth. So this is also Radha Krishna Leela.
Yeah, that's really nice. Earlier, we also read a section where Prabhupada had equated the Madhurya Leela with Krishna's relationship with the material world also. Do you remember that? Yeah. Those who are on a level to appreciate those insights, see them everywhere, just as you're pointing out. I mean, they're all pervading. Was there somebody else in the outside?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I have a reflection on 3.12.13. In the Purport, Prabhupada mentions it is in one's own self-interest to execute prescribed devotional service, and anyone who neglects this process neglects his own self-interest. I was remembering in Bhagavad Gita 10:4-5, it mentions ahimsa. Ahimsa means that people should be trained in such a way that the full utilization of the human body can be achieved. The human body is meant for spiritual realization. So any movement or any commissions which do not further that end commit violence on the human body.
Yeah, nice points. Thanks for bringing that out. You might remember hearing in school, if you cheat, you're only cheating yourself. Oh, I'm sorry, Samya Prash.
I was appreciating 3.13.45 in the Purport. The sages pray, both worlds are bewildered by your different energies. Those who are in the spiritual world are absorbed in your loving service, forgetting themselves, and you also. And those in the material world are absorbed in material sense gratification and therefore also forget you. I thought it was interesting how my understanding is that those in the spiritual world who are forgetting themselves and Krishna also means that the tattva is set aside, like, oh, he's the Supreme Lord and I'm like insignificant part and parcel. They're engaged in their particular intimate relationship. And so there's a way in which everybody is setting aside the objective reality. It's just that the conditioned living entities embrace this really unfortunate illusion that creates so much trouble for them, where they think they're the center of the universe and the devotees get to just have a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's unnecessary. I heard Prabhupada saying that afternoon. He said it's all abhinibheshita, absorption in something that is, he said, asango hyayam purusha, that you actually have nothing to do with. The material absorption. Okay, 1, 2.
One question you mentioned that devotees are expecting reciprocation and Krishna is responsible, they are eager to reciprocation. And since we few times read that Prabhupada says devotees don't expect any return, they're just happy with their service by hearing and chanting. How can you comment on that?
It's part of the human condition to love. Love means reciprocation. And when we have really deep love, then the reciprocation, it's inherent, because even when Krishna isn't apparently reciprocating, the devotee has such a clear, a deep understanding of his relationship with Krishna, like Ashushava Paravatampi Nashtamam, that even in circumstances where it seems like Krishna's not reciprocating, that they know that's his reciprocation. But people, I was saying in a general way, living entities need reciprocation. I was reading a while back when I was writing my other book about how the worst punishment, according to the United Nations, the worst torture there is solitary confinement. It's inhuman, and there's a whole movement to stop it. It's one of the worst things you can do to a human is put him or her in isolation of other humans, because they can't get any reciprocation. You need a little living entity, and I once heard somebody, this sadhu was talking a long time ago about how if you imagine you were in a place where there was no other living entities, and then in that barren kingdom, one green parrot flew and landed on your arm, he'd become your best friend. Because there's another living being to reciprocate with. It's like, hi. And he looks at you like, he loves me, because there's a soul looking back. Even if it's an animal soul, people need a pet because people are so unresponsive nowadays. How are you doing? Fine. How are you? They don't even care. So that's what I meant in a general way, that everybody is looking for some response. And Prabhupada talks about that in the Nectar Devotion, that everybody's working hard so they can have some response from the people. I mean, why do people go after awards and things like that? They want to bring it to their mom and say, Mom, I did it. They need that. So, Prabhu?
I was actually going to bring out the same prayer that Shami Prabhu brought out, but there was one sentence he didn't read. It's kind of like a very mild anartha buster.
Oh.
So after mentioning that no one can understand, the spiritual and material beings both forget him or forget, he says, no one can know you because you are unlimited. It is best not to try to know you by unnecessary mental speculation. Rather, kindly bless us so that we can worship you with causeless devotional service. I thought it's a nice prayer, especially if we're working toward the verse Anyabilashita Shunyam Gyana Kamiyanavratam Anukulina Krishna Nushilanam Bhakti Uttama, that we want no motivation and also no mental speculation.
Yeah, it's really helpful to have the Sambandha Gyan, to know, as we heard the hierarchy earlier, Prabhupada saying if you're giving your service and love at these different levels, the highest level where you'll actually be satisfied is to give it directly to Krishna. And that's something that Shukadeva Goswami mentions in the 10th canto, 14th chapter, near the end, where he says, Atmanam Akilatmanam. He says, imagine how attached we are to our own souls. He said, by extension, we think we're our bodies because we're in it. And how sacred is our body because we're in it. And then he said, imagine how attached we are to ourselves, but then imagine Atmanam Akilatmanam, how attached you be to the soul of your soul. And Krishna is the soul of your soul. So if we have that perspective, then as Prahlad Maharaj says, Naivatmana prabharyam nijalabha purno manam janada vidasat karano vrinite yat yachjano bhagavate vidadhita manam tatschatmane pratimukasya yata mukashri. I just made this whole point so I could chant that verse. And he says if you attend to Krishna, you're attending to yourself because you're a reflection of Krishna. So if somebody has that kind of knowledge, then they just transfer what was self-interest into their real self-interest, which is serving Krishna. Yes.
That consciousness also, just reflecting on, because you speak about that point frequently, reflecting on it, that consciousness is required in order to sacrifice for expanding the Sankirtan movement, because the bodily or mental turmoil which can potentially come from taking care of people and giving Krishna consciousness to people who don't want it, there has to be something beyond your own comfort which is worth suffering for in one sense, because it's not suffering, it's actually the greatest joy. Although my body may be inconvenienced, because it's for you, I just feel completely satisfied doing it. So whatever it takes in order to help these people become Krishna conscious, I'm willing to accept it.
Yeah, and helping them to do sacrifice too. Because, for instance, in a community, a spiritual community where there's an opportunity for everyone to make some sacrifice, then people learn the value of sacrifice, because it's natural that when you make proper sacrifice, then you feel happy. And what's more, you live in abundance. Jagnartak kamano nyatra loko yam karma bandhana tarartam karma konteya mukta sangha samachara. There's a way in which when you do a sacrifice, you actually realize your happiness, even if you don't know what it is at first, when you do the sacrifice. And also when we go out to meet people, we try to engage them in the spirit of devotion, so that they'll feel that because they did sacrifice, it made a shift in their consciousness. Yeah, nice points.
I always like that story you tell about ISV's old Sunday feast on Bascom, I think it was. Where
it was on Bascom Avenue.
The atheist.
We came up with a plan to, at every Sunday feast, half the Sunday program would be a talk about the importance of sacrifice, and the other half, at the intermission, we'd say, now anybody who wants to experience what it's like to go out on book distribution, we have cars waiting for you in the parking lot. And there are several devotees waiting with clipboards to assign them to a certain car. And half the room would clear out. And they get in the cars and they drive off to a neighborhood that was already pre-assigned. They do book distribution door to door under the guidance of some devotee. And then we'd have them back in time for announcements, and we'd pass the mic around for them to talk about how it went. So one night there was this guy, gave him the mic, and he goes, well, this is my first time here. He said, I was just really bored at home. My friend said, why don't you come to the Hare Krishna temple? They'll feed you. And so he said, I came, and then I went out for this selling book stuff, and I sold a Bhagavad Gita. And he said, and I'm an atheist. But he was bubbling over with happiness and just... Anyone from the outside? Have a couple minutes left. I don't think so. But he will someday. You know, if you think about King Nriga, he was the one, when Krishna asked him after he brought him back from being a lizard, he said, so tell your story. How did you become a lizard? And then he told about how he got cursed and everything. And then he said that there was a way that he had done some service for a Brahmana who asked him to print Bhagavad Gita for him and help him also build a temple for his beautiful deity. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that's why he got cursed, and then he was saved directly by Krishna. From being a lizard, Krishna reached his left hand in and pulled him out. And that's how he got to meet him, is because in a previous life he had, or in that life as King Nriga, he had done that spiritual charity for a Brahmana. Devavrata?
When we were in Barshana with Divyanand Prabhu's yatra, myself, Mahendra, and Akshobhya Tirtha Prabhu, there was that traffic jam at one point where we were just sitting there for 20 minutes. So we got out and we started distributing, and there's Vrajavasi children came up. And first they were just taking lollipops, but then they saw us distributing books and like, hey, we want the books. And then next thing we know, they're going up to cars and selling books to people.
I think they want to distribute one to you? That's so funny. We should get a little gang together. What kind of Sankirtan do you guys doing now? I run a gang of kids in Vraj. We got about 300 kids. Yeah, we're going to beat Mayapur this year. Get them a little bus, let them out. Okay, kids, go get them. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Panchatattva, Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Radha Govinda, Shri Radha Gopinath, 18 Thakur. If you so desire, please give us a taste for giving up anarthas and for doing sacrifice for Krishna. And please let us instill by our example the benefit of these two activities in the hearts of all that we meet by our example. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer in whole or in part. Please unmute and say Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Gaur Premanande. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Hari Bo. Hari Bo. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Hari Bo. Hari Bo. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Vanchakalpataruscha kripasinabhevacha patitanam pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha nantakoti Vaishnaviniki jai Gaura Premanande Haribo. Huh? Tomorrow's Sheshal. Devavrata knows, he sent it out. 10 to 1?
10:30 to 1, 4 p.m. to 4 to 5:15. We'll just do a half session.
Okay. Okay.
I guess some devotees may have things to do. Ultimately, wants to go to Govardhan, so we'll just do a half session.
Okay. Well, we're doing a half session because I have a meeting at 5:30.
Yeah, you said 5:15 was...
5:15 is cut off.